All right, what we want to do is get a couple of videos out to you guys covering the stuff we talked about this morning. This first video is we just want to run through a couple of just quick 10-15 second things we talked about, but just to show it to you so you can see it up close and personal and remind you of them, okay? The first thing is going into options in Outlook. There's actually a lot of information here, so if we click on File, Options, notice everything Outlook is here, you know, your calendar, your people, but we're just going to focus on mail. There's a few things here. For example, here's your spell check you can turn on or off. One quick thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, you have autocorrect in here. So if you go into autocorrect, you can tell it, for example, to replace BTC with Bates Technical College. So every time you hit BTC and then space, it'll replace that with Bates Technical College. That could be a nice little time saver for you. And then you just click on Add and OK, and that's now in my Outlook. All right, so I'll click on OK on that. So that's your spell checker that's in there. Here's our message arrival. We talked about that today, so you can make it as obnoxious or as silent as you want. You can play a sound, show an envelope. I'm going to turn all of them off so I can have complete visual and audio silence when something arrives. You can turn it off or on, whatever you want. And the other thing I wanted to show you down at the bottom, we talked about this today. Under send messages, you can turn on or off. Warn me when to send a message that may be missing an attachment. Okay, so I've changed my settings. I'm going to click on OK. And just to give you guys an example, I have this right here. So it's a very simple version, but I put in there the phrase attach, please find a file. What that looks like is I click send and it says you may have forgotten to attach a file, and then I can tell it don't send and go back and attach my file, or tell it send anyways, depending upon what I want to do. Okay? So that's a couple of quick things under options you can look for. The other thing we talked about, or another thing we talked about, was just dragging something into the calendar task. So I'm going to pick on this email here from Pam. It's just our agenda. That's a common thing you put in a calendar, you know, an agenda, a to-do list, directions, things like that. So I'm going to click on this email and drag it down into the calendar icon. So I drag it to the calendar and then let go. And what Outlook will do when you drag it down to either of those two places, it will just create a new calendar or task item, and it'll just take all that content and put it in the item. So all that I have to do, if I wanted to change my subject, I could. I just need to check the date, which in this case is actually right because it's still the same day. All I need to do is go and fix the time and make that 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And I'm done. And then since it's today, it's actually going to tell me that I'm 5 minutes overdue, or 5 hours overdue. Click on dismiss. So that's how we do that. And now that I've moved it to my calendar, ta-da, I can take it out of my inbox because I've placed it on my calendar. Okay? So again, I can drag that either down to calendar or down to tasks to put it to either one of those. Oops, sorry, tasks is there. Okay? Next up, we talked about rewriting a subject line. So to remind you of that, here is an email with critically important stuff. We know that because it says, here's a critically important graph you're going to need 6 months from now. So I'm not going to have luck searching for FYI later on. So I open up the email, I click on it to open it up, and then I just select the subject line, and I can call it whatever I want. So I'm going to call it critically important graph. Or I could call it, you know, enrollment data 2018 fall or something like that, but I can change that subject line so that it's a much better subject line. And then when I go to close it, it's going to say, are you sure you want to save it? I say yes, and now you'll see in my inbox, instead of saying FYI, it's got that subject line of critically important graph. So that's a real handy thing if you're trying to find information later. If you're scrolling in a folder or trying to find something, you're searching by the person who wrote it, that subject line is much more effective now. Okay? Next up, we've got 4 items that are conversations between myself and Kayla and the electrical construction department, just about a problem we're having with textbooks. So we talked about this today again. The only one we need is the most recent one. This isn't that bad because there's only 4, but I mean, I've seen 10, 20, 30 emails going back and forth in a conversation. So I can just clean ClickUp. I can do it just for one conversation or an entire folder or folder and subfolders. I'm going to do folder, and then I say, yes, I'm sure I want to clean it up. And you notice the bottom 3 emails went away because the most recent one contains all those other folders. So I just got rid of, 60% of my inbox with that one click right there. Okay, so those are 4 quick ones. We're going to do a couple of other longer ones, but that's just some quick and dirty 30-second things that you can do to clean up your inbox for you.